What is going on, world? What's up, YouTube? It's Zero here. Today I'm bringing us a brand new episode of The 8 Below Show. Welcome everyone to 8 Below. Thanks for being here, guys, to the best entertainment-related show here on YouTube. And I'm super excited about our episode here today. We have a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's get into it. I thought it would be a great way to start the show by talking about The Witcher, guys. We've talked about The Witcher on a number of occasions on the YouTube channel up to this point, and I wanted to talk about The Witcher 4, which is pretty much what we've been primarily talking about because The Witcher 3, of course, Wild Hunt has been out for, a number of years now. I mean, this is a series, guys, that has spanned since essentially 2007 and has gone to really this very day. I mean, if you take into consideration, of course, The Witcher Netflix show that's been going on. But if you look at the games, we're looking at from 2007 all the way to 2015, we've had The Witcher games, and 3 in total at this point. And at this point, guys, of course, with each game, you kind of get some expansions and some continuations of the franchise, which is awesome. Keeps you coming back to the game, which is really important. But what I wanted to talk about in this segment was why The Witcher 4 should exist. And this should be a game that should come out at some point in the future. So let's talk about it. So guys, obviously we know that CD Projekt Red are the creators of the Witcher franchise as far as in video game format. And so what I think it is really important when we're talking about games that should exist or continuations of franchises, The Witcher is one of those that definitely deserves to see a continuation for a number of reasons. I think if you say that, the first 3 games, it was meant to be a trilogy, and now CD Projekt Red has moved on to Cyberpunk 2077, which is, of course, the next game that CD Projekt Red is coming out with. Here's the thing, guys. The Witcher is a franchise, not only that I believe it deserves to continue, because not only a lot of people out there are now getting more acclimated and familiarized with The Witcher from the TV series on Netflix. There's a lot of people out there, guys, that aren't necessarily gamers, right? And if you are a gamer, some people haven't played The Witcher. Of course, they might have heard of it, but after watching the Netflix show, they might think to themselves, I'm going to give this a try and play, the first 3 Witcher games. And what I'll tell you is that I believe actually the Netflix series, The Witcher, I think that has actually really created this opportunity for continuations of the Witcher franchise. I mean, you could say, like I said, the first 3 games were a trilogy and that Geralt's, story is over. You could, of course, say that. But at the same time, I think there's still a lot, more to be told in the Witcher universe. In the grand scope of things, whether the main characters are no longer there or they're there, but they're side characters, they're not necessarily, the playable characters. And, of course, the torch is passed on. Think of Gears of War, guys. You had a number of games. You had 3 Gears of War games where, the main character that you played as was Marcus Phoenix. And then, of course, you had Gears of War Judgment, which, kind of was somewhat of a, kind of a change of direction in the franchise, which I thought was probably the worst of the franchise. But you don't play, of course, as Marcus. You play as Baird. And then, of course, you had the changing of the guard, so to speak, between Epic Games to the Coalition that was created and formed by Microsoft. And then, of course, what ended up happening from there is pretty much history, guys. You had the Gears of War Ultimate Edition that came out, and then, of course, Gears 4, which is where, of course, Marcus pretty much passes the torch onto his son, JD, and then JD from Gears 4 to Gears 5 is passing the torch to Kate Diaz. And so what I'm getting at here, guys, is that maybe they just passed the torch on to someone else, a new character. The beautiful thing about the Gears of War franchise, and, just to kind of compare here, is that JD was the main character in Gears of War 4, but Marcus was still there. He was just a side character in the story, and he was older, of course, right? So you could do similar things in The Witcher, I believe, that being CD Projekt Red. So, number 1, why should it exist? That being The Witcher 4. Well, I'll tell you guys, number one, if we want to talk about just anything, right off the top of our heads, we would certainly say just the legacy. We want to continue playing The Witcher games because there's something special. The Witcher Wild Hunt, guys, was, of course, pretty much, not only did it win so many awards, but it had such a immersive story, and the immense amounts of landscapes and just everything that you could explore with this open world. It definitely gives you that feeling like, man, I can't wait to see where they go with this. Because if you think about it, of course, on the Xbox Series X and the PS5 that's going to be launching later this year, The Witcher 4 could definitely use with some updated graphics, even though the graphics have been really up to this point very up to standard. But if they could continue that moving forward, that'd be one reason to definitely want to play it, just for the immersion as well as the story. Who knows where it goes, guys? And look, the way I see it is if they make it a prequel to the other Witcher games, or they go in the future a little bit. Whatever the case might be, I think that CD Projekt Red, this is a franchise that deserves to continue. And what we've heard from CD Projekt Red is that there's definitely consideration of continuing it after Cyberpunk 2077, which, by the way, guys, Cyberpunk 2077 definitely looks like a very immersive and exciting story, to say the least. And I know a lot of us are really anticipating it. I know it's probably one of the most anticipated games of the year, probably up there with like The Last of Us Part 2. And so I think, guys, can we expect this game to come out? We've talked about that in the past, and I think that the answer is yes. I think that we can expect it most likely at some point after Cyberpunk 2077. But at the end of the day, guys, it really comes down to CD Projekt Red and are they going to want to, continue this franchise because they own, the rights and such? Are they going to want to continue this story in one way or shape or form? Or do they just want to make Cyberpunk 2077 and make a trilogy out of that and kind of change things up a little bit? Obviously, we see a lot of developers out there that are able to work on multiple projects. Maybe CD Projekt Red doesn't necessarily want to do that. They want to just focus on one game at a time. And right now it's Cyberpunk, and then maybe after that it'll be another Cyberpunk, or maybe, who knows where it could go. But I think that, guys, at the end of the day, The Witcher deserves to exist not only as a legacy to gaming, because this is a game that, of course, like I said, is spanned since 2007 as far as one of the greatest, role playing games in the, as far as in the action genre. And I think it's really important that this franchise continues in some capacity or another, and I believe that it will. And if CD Projekt Red decides that they don't want to make Witcher games anymore for whatever reason, they could, of course, sell the IP for a pretty big price, and then who knows what companies would maybe jump on that opportunity. But at the end of the day, I think that CD Projekt Red is probably the best to, keep the rights at this point and make another game. And look, I've said this many times, guys. When it comes to movies, it's usually good if there's a series of movies that comes out. Let's just say, for example, like the Harry Potter series. I think it's good that throughout the course of that series of movies, they had different directors, different visions. Now, with CD Projekt Red and The Witcher, I look at the same kind of thing in gaming as well. If one developer has one, particular series for an extended period of time, there's at some point or another going to be problems. You look at, with Call of Duty, there's been issues along the way. And I mean, obviously they come out with a game every year. So obviously some games are going to be better than others. But still, when you look at it, CD Projekt Red, sometimes it's good to have a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of, creativity that can come into a franchise. So potentially, maybe not right away, but at some point they could sell the rights, and then of course another developer could really breathe fresh life into the Witcher franchise. But like I said, guys, I think that this is a franchise that deserves to continue. A franchise that should exist amongst other action role-playing games. But let me know what you guys think and what you guys are hoping for in The Witcher 4. Let me know in the comment section below. And for more The Witcher 4 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. It seems like we've been talking about Rage quite a bit on the YouTube channel, but I think, guys, that Rage strikes me as one of those franchises that has an immense amount of possibility and a real sense of not only creativity, but at the same time, there's just a lot of possibility with this franchise. And I think it hasn't hit in a lot of certain areas. And I think it's really hurt this franchise. One that I think that really could be a shooter in the landscape of gaming and could be something really special. So I want to talk about what happened to Rage and, what happened, with, of course, throughout the course of its history at this point, and what could that mean for the future. So let's talk about it. So guys, on the YouTube channel, we talk a lot about the future of games and the future of movies and entertainment in general, right? And so Rage is certainly no different with that. We've talked about the future of this franchise, what they can, continue doing as far as what that being like ID Software and Bethesda, what they're doing right, wrong, and what they can do different moving forward. But we also want to talk about kind of where we're at so far with this franchise. So I like to dissect kind of where we're at currently with a game and then in a series and see where it went wrong and what can happen moving forward that can help the franchise kind of get its ground back. So guys, this is a franchise, obviously, that has spanned, not that long, not that long as far as a period of time. I mean, it came out in 2010, I should say 2011, technically, on the consoles and such. And then, of course, that being Rage. And then Rage 2 came out in 2019. So a number of years later is when we got that sequel. So number one, that could be, part of the problem. But number two is, guys, this is a franchise that I think suffers from a couple of things. Number one is that the developers had stated over at ID Software, they had stated before Rage 2 had even come out, they were ready to start working on Rage 3. And so that's kind of alarming to me because when you look at between, of course, the first game and the second game, you've got almost, you're pushing about 10 years there. And so it feels like you should have been totally focused on Rage 2. And we know, guys, that from Rage 2, we had some issues, of course, making, the world was just kind of boring at times. It was obviously an open world setting, but boring at times. And that's just, there really no way around it. However, I think that underneath all of the negative reception, negative reviews that came out about Rage 2, I think that there's something special there. They just didn't land on everything, and maybe their mind was in Rage 3 and what they could do, better, with that one, or what they could do to continue the franchise, even though not knowing if there was going to be another one if Rage 2 didn't sell well. And we know, guys, that Rage 2 didn't sell quite as well as, I think Bethesda was hoping. Now, here's the thing. When it comes down to sales and reception, all of these things are a big deal when it comes to, the continuation of these franchises. So number one, I believe that Rage 2, a huge issue with it was just the simple fact that it wasn't super immersive at times. The story, even though it had some really great concepts and such, might not have landed in the best possible way. And then after the campaign is over, you have no other reason to come back to the game because, well, are you going to play the game over again? Even though it has some really interesting, some very interesting mechanics to it, is there really a reason to come back to Rage 2 after beating the campaign one time? Is there any reason to come back to the game, period, after beating it? Well, not really, because there's no multiplayer and there's no, single player co-op, I should say, because single player is essentially all that we have in Rage 2. And unfortunately, I'm not sure why this was something that didn't necessarily, translate here from Rage to Rage 2. Why aren't you having multiplayer and co-op modes in Rage 2? We look at a franchise like Doom that Bethesda also, of course, is, the publisher for. They are without a doubt, I'm happy with where Doom is going, because Doom 2016 was a real surprise to a lot of people, having multiplayer co-op as well as, single player. And then the story continues with Doom Eternal. And then, of course, they also had multiplayer. And look, with multiplayer, it was different. They kind of changed some things, right? They added, of course, battle mode, which definitely was kind of throwing a monkey wrench into everything. But it was something unique that the community really has responded, whether it's negatively or positively. This fan base is growing. Rage could be the same type of thing, guys. This is a special franchise, in my opinion, underneath all of the bad reception, the bad reviews, underneath the some of the mechanics, or the lack of story, some of the characters that people didn't like, the direction that it went in that people didn't like. All in all, guys, there's something special here, because look, one thing that we do know about Rage, people were stating that they praised the game's combat mechanics as well as the graphics, and I agree with that. But people did criticize that the story, they criticized the characters, they criticized, the direction in the story, and those were the biggest things that people, were critical of. But look, at the end of the day, it comes down to when you're talking about a story like Rage and a franchise like this, I think that people would be more so, because I feel like Rage, it feels like, it's kind of like that Mad Max feel, or like Fallout meets Mad Max, right? And it feels like this could be a great multiplayer experience, something really cool, be able to customize your characters, your weaponry, and things of that nature. And they just haven't done that with Rage 2. So I think that Rage 2 was a massive hit and miss, because you had a real possibility of building off of Rage. And then, of course, it just didn't really land well with Rage 2. So I think ultimately, guys, what happened with Rage was, from the first game to the second game, both games have had, at this point in time, have had some, mediocre reviews as far as when we're talking about the story, the characters, as well as the direction. But both of them are, they're getting that critical praise for the actual, mechanics as well as the graphics. So there's something there. The question is they gotta, they really have to kind of dig deep into the roots of this franchise and get those things out. And I think a great way to start with that would be the multiplayer, as well as, some co-op modes, other ways to connect with the franchise, get people on board. I'm one of those people, guys, that thinks that there's something here with Rage. Like, there's something special underneath everything. This could be a special franchise, but when you only have one way in which I can connect with that franchise, then that just, obviously is going to create issues for myself, because even if I say I beat the campaign, I want to play it again because it was that good, I play it one more time and it might, I might try things a little bit different in the campaign, or I might try it on a harder difficulty. But after I'm done playing it, at the end of the day, I'm moving on to another game that has more to offer. And so with Rage, as long as the most important thing with these video games, AAA titles coming from these big publishers as well as developers, is having ways that you can bring your community, your fan base back to the game. Multiplayer modes absolutely do that. It's been proven time and time again. Co-op modes are a way that you can play with your friends. It works, guys, time and time again. You look at games like Rainbow Six Quarantine are going to be specific to co-op, right? Unless something changes, of course, along the way. But co-op modes work as well. Some people think that single player needs to go the way of the dinosaur, and that's absolutely, untrue. But what needs to happen, if you're going to try to get my $60 and, you want to get my money, you're going to have to, as a developer or publisher, you're going to need to really entice me to not only come in to purchase a game for just a single player story. Because in this landscape where there's tons of games out there, there's a ton of games that want to draw my eyeballs and my, my skills of playing, a shooter or whatever the game might be. Whether those games are free or they're pay to play, there's so much competition. And so a game like Rage that has a lot of potential, I'm not saying that needs to be free to play, but I'm saying that it needs more ways that I can connect with the franchise. And so at the end of the day, that's what I think happened to Rage. Just not enough ways to connect, and the ways in which we could connect just didn't land extremely well. So here's hoping Rage 3, if this game ever comes out, has everything that we want in it, and they take their time. Look, you've had between 2011 to 2019 to do Rage 2. Let's say you got 2019 to close to, 2030 to get the next one out. I think you should bring it out a little bit sooner than that so people kind of remember Rage for what it is. And I think it's important that, they bring it out probably in the next, 3 to 5 years and have more modes that you can, have that we can connect with as a franchise as a fan base. So with that being said, guys, I want to hear from all of you though. What do you guys think happened to Rage? Let me know in the comment section below. And what do you guys want to see moving forward in a Rage 3? Let me know, guys. And for more Rage content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. A Quiet Place Part 2 is easily one of the most anticipated movies of the year, and so many people are really excited about this movie, guys. And so in this last segment of the show, I wanted to talk about everything that we know so far about A Quiet Place 2. So let's get into it. So guys, Ali Gemmel of Screen Rant wrote the following article: A Quiet Place 2 sneaks into theaters in 2020, continuing the story of sound-sensitive monsters began in 2018's surprise box office smash. A Quiet Place is A Quiet Place Part 2 is the sequel to A Quiet Place, starring John Krasinski, who also wrote and directed, Emily Blunt, Millicent Simmons, and Noah Jupe. A Quiet Place followed the Abbott family, Lee, Evelyn, Reagan, and Marcus, as they navigated a world where aliens with extremely acute hearing abilities have wiped out a large portion of the population. The Abbotts live on a farm where silence is observed at all times to avoid aliens finding and killing them. The family's world is turned upside down when a chain of noisy events alerts the aliens to their home, and they must try to survive as best they can. A Quiet Place made a big noise at the box office with its contained yet completely terrifying premise. By the time it left theaters, A Quiet Place had pocketed $188 million domestically and more than $340 million worldwide, which is a big deal, guys, specifically because this is a horror movie. A lot of times horror movies, some of them actually, the horror movie genre has a real huge fan base. But at the same time, for a brand new franchise, right, that being A Quiet Place, that's a pretty big numbers for a horror movie, for something just starting. A Quiet Place 2 was originally scheduled to arrive in theaters on March 20th, 2020. That didn't happen thanks to the quickly escalating American outbreak of course, the outbreak that's happening in our world right now. And for quite a while, the sequel was left with no release date at all. Finally, on April 2nd, 2020, Paramount announced a new release date for A Quiet Place 2 of September 4th, 2020. However, with the pandemic still having no clear end in sight, one wonders if that date will stick either. And so, honestly, guys, it's hard to say. When you really think of, as far as the date is concerned, there's a good chance that it's going to get pushed back even further, because it just really depends. When we think of the movie theater system, and now with the pandemic going on, what types of rules are going to be in place when we talk about restaurants or we talk about movie theaters? When everything does kind of go back to some form of normalcy, are we going to have to be a couple of seats apart in the movie theater? Are they going to not be able to sell out movie theaters? It's hard to say. And so a lot of, of course, a lot of these studios are probably thinking to themselves, what, if we can't sell out the theaters, why not just put it onto a streaming service, or we just wait and delay the movie even longer? John Krasinski will return to direct A Quiet Place 2. He also gets the credit for penning the script this time around, just like he did with A Quiet Place. The sequel will be Krasinski's third time as the director on a feature-length film, with A Quiet Place in 2016, The Haulers, already under his belt. And I'm excited about this, guys. I think this has kind of become his baby, as far as the first movie was I was just trying to see like where the, he probably just really made it just kind of going to be its own thing. But then when it had such huge, so many amounts of people that were coming to watch the movie, and it really built this fan base, he's probably thinking this is like kind of becoming his baby in a major way from a career perspective. As far as the A Quiet Place 2 plot is concerned, guys, precious little information is yet available about Quiet Place 2's plot, despite a full trailer and other marketing having been released at this point. The main story appears to be set almost immediately after the original, with Evelyn Abbott and her children venturing elsewhere after their farm burns down. Along the way, they meet at least 2 new characters, but it's unclear if those people will ultimately be friends or foes. And as far as the cast is concerned, guys, cast looks stellar at this point. Audiences will see some familiar faces in A Quiet Place 2. Emily Blunt will reprise her role as Evelyn. Millicent Simmons is back as Reagan, and Noah Jupe will appear once again as Marcus. John Krasinski will himself return as Lee in flashback scenes, but it's unclear how much he'll be in the film. 2 additional actors have been added to the A Quiet Place 2 cast so far: Cillian Murphy in March and Jimon Hounsou in August, the latter replacing the original cast, Brian Tyree Henry. So, look, when you look at, Cillian Murphy, guys, and Jimon Hounsou, these guys have been in a number of movies, shows. I think that we can all probably feel really good about those 2 being in it. It'll be interesting to see if they are more, friend or foe, like it said. Now, as far as the other things that we know, guys, obviously A Quiet Place 2 has had, it's had a couple of trailers at this point. It's had like an official trailer, and so you can kind of watch those, and it's hard to say like how much of the story they're giving away. It looks like they're pretty well crafted. I gotta say, guys, if I were to give a review for these, I think they were pretty good. It was just that unnerving feel once again. It looks like it's kind of back to the same thing that made, A Quiet Place, the first one, so good, that being just like that tension, the quiet nature. I remember watching A Quiet Place in the theaters, guys, and man, that was a very eerie experience and very just strange. It was kind of an uncomfortable experience because you're sitting with a bunch of other people in a movie theater, and so much of the movie's quiet. You could hear people next to you that are chewing on popcorn or eating candy or drinking a soda, and while you're just sitting there, right? And because it's so quiet, so much of the movie. And so it really created these interesting dynamics, and I'm really interested to see if that happens once again here in A Quiet Place 2. Now, with more actors that are being introduced to the fray, introduced into the story, you kind of wonder if there's going to be more dialogue than there was in the first one. But nonetheless, I think John Krasinski knows exactly where he wants to go with this story, and I hope it really lands on multiple levels. But at this point, guys, everything that we know so far about the movie, we know a good amount, but at the end of the day, we know so little because the trailers didn't really give away a lot. At least it doesn't seem like they did. But nonetheless, I think this is going to continue being one of the most anticipated movies of this year or next year, or whenever it would finally come out. Hopefully, it's going to be, stay put. We'll be able to watch it later on here in 2020, and we'll be able to talk about it as the reviews start coming in, and we're able to kind of talk about it here on the YouTube channel. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. What are you the most excited about with A Quiet Place Part 2? And do you think this is going to live up to the hype? Do you think it's going to be better than the first one? Do you think it'll be a great continuation? Let me know what you guys think. And for more A Quiet Place Part 2 content and videos, stay here with Zero TV. And with that being said, everyone, I hope you guys did enjoy this episode of The 8 Below Show. And if you guys did, leave a thumbs up, subscribe if you're new, stay positive, and as always, I'll talk to you guys all in the next one. Peace.